Batman can't push himself as far as Deathstroke can. Now, you'll see why I've said that in just a moment, because today we're covering the 4th issue of Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. Before we proceed though, the last issue consisted of Deathstroke and Bruce getting into a crazy ruthless showdown because Deathstroke assumed Bruce was an assassin trying to kill Alec, when in reality he was just flying around and accidentally crashed into them due to the lack of sun. So after clearing things up, Slade settled for Bruce accompanying them on their journey to Gillingham to compensate for their horse that he killed during his crash. And this issue picks up directly after that, with the 3 of them entering the frozen wastelands of Slen Roslas, where they were immediately thrown into a battle against a massive army of dead warriors from the Old Kingdom. As the clash pressed forward, Slade noticed Bruce was getting tired pretty quickly, so he expressed that kings were made of a lot harder steel back in his day. As stated by Bruce, however, while blasting a soldier with his heat vision, he wasn't a king at all, which is because he didn't want to be. When the position was offered to him by Queen Lara and Kal-El at the end of the original Dark Knights of Steel series, he actually rejected it in order to further explore the land, which is basically how he ended up here. Speaking of kings though, Bruce wanted to know what happened to the kings in Slade's time, so Slade said the same thing that happened to their subjects: "You're looking at them." Which brings us to a flashback of a beautiful thriving version of Gillingham before it was struck by the Allwinter. Under their beloved King Maxwell of the Lord clan, the kingdom was united and peaceful. All that eventually came to an end though when the court Magus Victor, aka Mr. Freeze, discovered his wife was having an affair with Maxwell. What would follow after that was a terrible vengeance. His anger and wrath were so overwhelming that the entire kingdom was cursed, along with all of the people inside. So now we know that the Allwinter stems from Mr. Freeze, and he's the reason for all the dead soldiers attacking them. Now, the reason I said Batman can't push himself as far as Slade is because in this situation, it was true. The closer they grew to Gillingham, the darker and darker it was getting, which was wreaking havoc on Bruce's body due to his Kryptonian biology drawing energy from the sun. So Alex suggested him to depart from them. He had already helped them so much. Bruce wasn't one to cower away when things got dark though, insisting they proceed moving onward. Later on, Bruce and his questions persisted. Wanting to know as much about the Allwinter as he could, he asked Slade why nobody had put an end to it yet. Slade claimed there were 2 reasons. 1, because the kingdom was surrounded by so much dead now, and 2, because it was also surrounded by a massive storm called the Everstorm that no man or sorcerer could ever pierce. Prompting another question by Bruce, which was then how are they gonna pierce it? And honestly, Slade had absolutely zero clue. Later on, upon running into yet another massive horde of dead soldiers, one of them got their hands on Alec. Fortunately, it wasn't able to harm him because moments later, Slade hurled his axe directly into its skull. As a result of the land growing darker and darker though, Bruce was struggling to say the least. Without any energy from the sun, one of them was able to slice him in the face after batting him onto the ground. So Deathstroke was forced to step it up and save an ally for a second time and counting. This time he fully let loose though, punching one of their skulls off, smashing another into the ground, using his axe to slice through one of them completely, and then bull rushing a gigantic cluster until there wasn't any left still standing. After that though, him and Alec realized Bruce was bleeding like a pig. He tried shrugging it off and expressing he was good enough to carry onward, but Slade disagreed, telling him not to be a fool and that he'd end up dying if he carried on. And if he thought things were bad now, then he'd be in for a surprise when they arrived to Gillingham, because over there, the Everstorm swallowed the entire sun whole. Nevertheless, Bruce was stubborn and insisted he proceed accompanying them, but in the end, it didn't really matter. Slade wouldn't let him tag along because after burying Adeline's body in issue 2, he refused to bury another. Him and Alec were very appreciative of his assistance, but it was time to go their separate ways. The rest of Alec and Slade's time together was definitely gruesome to say the least. It was extremely cold, extremely windy, and filled with a great number of undead soldiers. But eventually they got through them and stumbled upon a little building where they could set up camp for the night. Outside of the building was so loud that it reminded Alec of a time when his parents were still around. Whenever there was a big thunderstorm, his mother would sing to him in order to drown out the thunder, prompting Slade to ask him where he was from. Apparently it was a village called Yurnal, and all the people within it, including his parents, were killed by Vander Savage's army. During their raid, Alec ran into a nearby swamp that was supposedly cursed with an evil spirit inside, but Alec quickly discovered that that was far from the truth. The spirit was actually a guardian and protector who remembered the world when it was still green and good, and it told Alec he was gonna bring that world back. Because Slade wasn't all that convinced Alec was telling the truth though, Alec expressed the Green also told him what happened to Slade's sons and that it wasn't his fault or fair for Addie to blame him. But just like in the last issue when his boys were mentioned, Slade's blood was fueled by rage, picking Alec up against the wall and stating he should knock the color out of his eyes because he didn't know anything about him. Alec begged to differ though, indicating that he knew he loved them and expressing that it wasn't too late for him to be a hero. But moments later their engagement was abruptly put to a stop when a massive spear came flying in through the window and directly through Slade's back. After that, Rose and Killer Frost made their way inside, only to take things even further by sending Slade plummeting into the abyss after hurling him out of a window. Meanwhile, inside Gillingham itself, Solomon Grundy was reporting the news to Mr. Freeze. Slade had fallen, but he may still be alive. He wanted to know if they should send more of their dead army his way, but as stated by Mr. Freeze, the storm was hungry, so it was best for them to let him freeze. But sadly, that's when our issue comes to an end, guys, but if you want to see what happens next, let me know in the comments down below.